April rested her head in her arm as she watched the trees fly past her window on the train. She was on her way to her new residence, an apartment nearby to the college she was going to attend for the next 4 years. There was so much hustle and bustle all week as she prepared for this trip that she hadn't had much time to realize how scared she was. But now, as she had nothing to do but wait, her thoughts dwelled on how different everything was going to be. She was going to a new place with new people. She wouldn't see her family until the holidays, or her normal bed for that matter. April groaned a little as she thought about how she can never sleep in a new bed, and how she was going to have to get up very early the following morning. This made April's pet parrot, Lurpa, who was sitting on the windowsill, wobble up to April's face and rub her head against April's cheek. April scratched Lurpa's feathers with her finger and chuckled a little. Lurpa hadn't changed at all over the years, unlike April. She had changed a lot, April thought. When she was younger, the idea of traveling to a brand new place without her family would have been a dream come true. She would have jumped at the opportunity without hesitation or a fear in the world. April sighed and looked back out the window as she wished she could have the same innocent fearlessness she used to have, and thought just how ironic it was to think that way. One would think a person would get more fearless as they grow older, but as April has found, it was quite the opposite. April quickly wrapped her arm around Lurpa, hiding the bird as someone walked through her otherwise empty cart. She wasn't exactly supposed to have Lurpa on the train, never mind out of her carrier. But the person just walked through the cart and exited the other side, hardly even noticing April. April let out a little sigh of relief and looked back outside. It was raining hard, which, as April noticed when she boarded, put most of the passengers in a gloomy mood. But not April. If anything, the rain was keeping her calmed down. At least that was one thing that has never changed about her, April thought. She always loved the rain. It seemed that whenever it came to exploration, discovery, or change in her life, it always seemed to be on a rainy day, whether it was finding worms in her backyard or going off to college for the first time. Even the one time as a kid when she ran away from home for a week, it had been raining the entire time. April chuckled as she recalled the experience. If she could go back in time, she probably would have wanted to give her 10-year-old self a slap in the face for doing it. But at the same time, she had to admit that it was one of the most important experiences in her life. 10-year-old April panted as she trudged up the slanted sidewalk, the rain making a steady tippity-tap sound as it hit her clear umbrella. She was heading up the steep street to go to her auntie's place after having run away from home. She had a suitcase with her as well as her pet parrot, Lurpa, who was making whiny noises from April's shoulder as the wind would shift occasionally and they would get briefly pelted with the rain. April kept trying to shush Lurpa by patting her on the head and telling her that they were going to be there soon. But it wasn't easy for April to sound loving when she was as emotional as she was. All this time, for her whole life, as short as it had been, her family had lied to her. She didn't know how to feel about it. She felt angry, sad, confused, and shocked all at once, and it was this Mod Podge of emotion that decided she needed to leave. She took Lurpa from her cage and packed up all her essentials: umbrella, some clothes, toothbrush, bird food, and most importantly, her favorite stuffed animals. And off she stormed to go live with her auntie with no plans to ever return. April looked ahead and saw her auntie's apartment building getting closer. She had forgotten just how much of a steep hill the walk was, and carrying her suitcase during a thunderstorm wasn't helping things. But she eventually made it to the glass doors of the apartment building and buzzed her auntie's place. And soon she was inside the warm flat, sipping hot chocolate on the sofa, while Lurpa preened herself, quite displeased with the wet walk they just came from. Normally the hot chocolate would have made April immediately brighten up, but not today. Her hurricane of emotions had finally settled onto mostly one: sadness. And she just stared at the marshmallows in her hot drink as they slowly melted, waiting for her auntie to ask her what happened. But Plura, April's auntie, just simply got herself a cup of hot cocoa and sat down with a magazine and started reading like nothing was going on. This somewhat irritated April, and she eventually spoke up. "Aren't you going to ask me what I'm doing here?" "Nope," Plura replied without looking up from her magazine. April wasn't expecting such a lax response, and paused for a while before simply asking how long she could stay. April's auntie took a sip and, once again without looking up from her magazine, said April could stay as long as she liked. This also surprised April. She thought for sure there would need to be some explaining and arguing involved to persuade her auntie. She had come up with about a dozen different ways she was going to argue on the walk over. But not only did her auntie not ask her why she was there, but she didn't seem to care at all that she had come all the way over by herself. But since staying was what she wanted, April didn't say anything more and just drank her hot chocolate in silence. Once they were finished, Plura got up and washed their mugs, and just told April to be sure to clean up after Lurpa. And for the next 6 days, April lived with her auntie, and not once did Plura ever bring up anything about April's family or asked why April was there. And despite that being a technically perfect situation for someone who ran away, as the days went by, it started to really bother April that her auntie didn't care at all. Eventually, April couldn't take it anymore, and she went up to her auntie while she was reading a book and asked why she wasn't telling April to go home. Without looking up from her reading, Plura said that if April wanted to go home, she'd be glad to take her as soon as she was finished reading. And that was it. April couldn't stand it anymore, and she started angrily telling her auntie off. How could she not care that a kid had run away from home? April's auntie wasn't fazed at all and just flipped a page of her book. This made April even angrier, and she started crying, saying that Plura was just the same as April's family. She didn't care at all about her. Nobody cared about her. And on April went, finally letting out everything, and eventually saying how she found out that all this time, she had been adopted as a baby. She was the only child in her family that was. And for her whole life, her adopted family had kept it a secret from her. She had found out when she had gotten into an argument with her brother, who eventually slipped up the information while they were fighting. April fell to her knees in tears in front of Plura, who hadn't said anything the entire time. Once April was almost completely calmed down, Plura sighed slightly, closed her book, looked at April, and asked her why it was that April always called her auntie. April paused from the unexpected question. She looked at her auntie, wiping her tears in confusion. "Why do you call me auntie?" Plura asked again. "Because..." April started to answer slowly, but then Plura started speaking again, saying that she was just a childhood friend of April's adopted mother. They weren't actually related, and therefore she wasn't actually April's aunt. This was not a surprise to April. She had always known that, but April had just always called Plura auntie. She was used to it. But auntie was a word used to refer to a family member, Plura pointed out. April could see where her auntie was going and fell silent for a few moments before quietly saying that at least Plura had never lied to her. And what if she had? April's auntie asked. What if April thought Plura was her real aunt and just now found out that she wasn't? Would that really change so much? Would everything I've done for you in the past just disappear? Would it change the fact that I've been taking care of you for the past week for no benefit of my own? Believe me, picking up your dirty laundry every day isn't exactly a pleasurable task, Plura said bluntly. April didn't look at her auntie, so Plura continued. Perhaps it wasn't the best decision for your family to keep your adoption a secret from you for so long, but people don't always make the best decisions. They make them based on facts, reasoning, and a boatload of emotion. And sometimes doing what's kind isn't always the right thing. The conflict in that last sentence frustrated April, and she abruptly started to ask what her auntie was talking about, but Plura cut her off. Did you ever stop to think that maybe they didn't tell you you were adopted because they didn't want you to feel different? Because they wanted you to feel like you were truly part of their family? April just stared at her auntie. Did you ever stop to think just how guilty your brother has been feeling for the past week for driving you away? At the mention of her brother, April forgot about any consideration into what her auntie was telling her and immediately got caught in her anger again, yelling about how her brother didn't want her at home anyway. But Plura cut her off once again, asking her how many times her brother stood up for April when people were picking on her. How many bedtime stories had he read to her to help her sleep? How many times had he comforted and carried her to her parents after she had hurt herself playing outside? How many times had he given up being with his friends to play board games with her while she was sick? Does that sound like someone who doesn't care? Plura asked quite straightforwardly. April didn't say anything, and Plura leaned back in her chair. Well, you know the facts. Now it's time for you to do some reasoning. You know how they feel, you know how you feel. Time to make a decision. Are you going to go back to them or not? Back on the train, 18-year-old April chuckled as she remembered how straightforward her auntie always was, always acting like she had no time for anybody, when in reality she always went out of her way to help them. When April thought back on her infamous runaway, she knew that no matter what choice she had made in the end, she would have had to go home eventually. But at the time, Plura had made April genuinely feel like she had to make a big decision for herself. And it was because of that her choice to return back home forever carried so much weight. April had made the choice that day to accept and love her family, and to realize how fortunate she was to be adopted by such a loving family. April wondered what would have happened if she had said she wasn't going back. How would her auntie have told her that she had to get out and go home? April probably would have continued to hate her family, and probably Plura as well. But that was just like her auntie, to gamble on a child's innocence to make the right choice. April felt the train slow to a halt and heard the robotic voice come through the speakers, letting her know this was her stop. With some protests from Lurpa, April put her pet parrot back into her carrier and headed towards the doors. The fear and anxiety was starting to set in again, but as soon as April stepped off the train onto the platform, she took out an envelope she had in her back pocket. It was from her auntie Plura, who gave it to April before she left and told her not to open it until she got off the train. April took a breath and opened up the envelope and began reading the letter. "Your mom told me you've run away from home again. Tisk tisk. People never change, do they? Well, at least I won't have to pick up after you this time. Honestly, for someone who takes such good care of her parrot, you'd think she wouldn't keep missing the laundry bin with her smelly socks every time. I certainly hope you've gotten your cleaning habits under control. Not every landlord is as forgiving as me. Oh yeah, and your brother told me that you got all sappy when you said goodbye, saying things like you were going to miss playing board games and other pukey stuff like that. What happened to the April I used to know, huh? I would have expected you to turn on your heels with your nose in the air. Who needs a boy like that? Then, of course, you'd walk straight into the glass doors like always. But I guess since, by now, you've successfully made it off the train without smashing your face, it shows that maybe you really have changed. Where you'd once walk into a door, you now look where you're going. Where you once were fearless, you're now afraid. Where once you'd wish for your brother to leave you alone, you'd now rather have him with you. Where once you would run away, you'd now rather stay. Kind of upside down, huh? Well, I guess that also means that since you clearly weren't ready to be on your own before, you know, being the messy, clueless kid that you were, that now that you're all turned upside down, maybe, just maybe, you are finally ready to be on your own. Just a possibility. Either way, since I know you'll be coming to visit me every chance you have, because I know you won't forget your auntie when you're on break, I'll be sure to leave some hot water simmering for hot cocoa. Just as long as you promise to keep Lurpa away from the upholstery, and stop missing the laundry basket. Your cranky old auntie, Plura." April started laughing, just chuckling at first, before full-on belly laughing right there in the train station, making the other people who were extra gloomy from the rain give April the hairy eyeball. Once April recovered, she shook her head and started the long walk to her new home with a big smile on her face. It was just like her auntie, always knowing exactly what to say, and always taking a gamble while doing it. After all, if April really had walked into the doors on the train like she often did, that whole message would have fallen apart. Hello, I'm Zaccura, and thank you for listening to my story of April. If you're new here, then this is part 4 in a monthly project I'm doing for this year, 2018, where every month I attempt to create a character based off of that month, as well as write a story for them. So this one was for April, but I'll have the playlist that has all the stories thus far linked up in the card as well as in the description box in case you'd like to hear them. But for now, let's chat a bit about this month's story and character and illustration stuffs. So, where do I begin? If I had to sum up the experience of creating this month's story and character and illustration, just the whole thing, in one word, is hard. It was so hard, and I don't know why it was so hard, but it just was. I mean, I at first, the whole experience was just a struggle from beginning to end. I didn't have like any ideas at first, and when I finally did, I didn't know how to go about it. And when then I knew how to go about it, it wasn't working out very well, and just ended up being a little bit of a mess. But I did get it done, so that's good. I barely got it done. I mean, it's like 1 or 2 days before the end of April when I'm posting this video, probably. So if you guys have been following this series before, then you know that like for every month there's like this word that I try to adhere to and kind of form the story a little bit about it. Like last month's word was courage, February's word was sincerity, and so on. So April's word was innocence. And so I wanted to create a child character, because that would also give some variety, I guess, into the characters, to have one be a kid. But I kind of struggled with how to make to have a full complete story from that. So I felt that if it was, rather than having her child experience be the present day of the story, rather have it be something that she thinks back on. So it's kind of like a flashback, really. Because that way there can be some, retrospect and like, oh, what she learned from it, how she changed, blah, 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 and you can have it all wrap up like that. So that's what I ended up going for. I ended up actually having the present day of the story be when she's 18, but then kind of like the main bread of the story, the main point of it really takes place when she's 10, and then it finally ends again back into the present day when she's 18. When it came to actually writing her story, I've ran into so many difficulties and issues. In particular, one was dialogue. If you've been following these stories before, in these short stories, I usually try to keep dialogue to a minimum, like the actual parts where I have to, whatever, quote unquote, voice act as the characters. I usually keep that very minimal. Sometimes it's not even there at all. So I usually try to write in a way where it's like I just get the point across of what the person said rather than actually wording it and saying it myself, because I'm not good at voice acting, and it just be kind of, it's also, I feel like it's a little confusing when I'm voicing everyone, and I don't know. But when it came to this one, I just couldn't figure out how to word things to say them properly without actually having the characters say it. So I had to do quite a bit of stuff that Plura said, and then like I mixed it also with some dialogue that I didn't say, so it was like jumping from first person to third person, and it was just kind of a mess, to be honest. And I don't know, I hope it's not that confusing to you guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Not to mention, I made all the characters female, and so I was using the she pronoun everywhere, and there's so many grammar problems that I didn't have time to fix, and then I also didn't really know how to fix some of them because I was just constantly throwing around the word she, and I was like, wait, but does that mean I'm talking about April, or am I talking about Plura, or am I talking about Lurpa? What's going on? So there are problems there. Some positive things though about the story and the characters is that I quite enjoyed exploring Plura's character. I kind of just liked the fact that she was just kind of like this, I ain't got time for this, but in the end she actually, she let April hear what she needed to hear, and helped her out a lot. And I'm not sure if it was done perfectly, and maybe she was a little bit harsh on a 10-year-old who just found out such a huge part of their life, and maybe it was a little bit just a little bit cold, for the way she treated her. But yeah, I like characters like that. I don't know why. I like characters that are just a little, a little crass. Is that the word? Crass? I don't know. Then when it came to the illustration, I ran into even more problems. So for one, I wasn't really sure if I should have went with the 18-year-old version of April for the illustration, or the 10-year-old version of April, because the 10-year-old version is kind of like the main point of the story. That's like the main thing, but at the same time the story starts with her being 18 and ends with her being 18, like it's the present day. So I actually did the sketch for both, and then eventually I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna pick one, so I just chose the 18-year-old version. Not really sure how I feel about that, or I don't know if that's the best decision or not, but whatever, it was the decision. One thing that I did try to do is I wanted to kind of, shake up the pose a little, because like for the last 3 months, the poses have been pretty similar. So, I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I gave her this pose from the back, she's kind of looking over her shoulder, to make it a little bit more unique. And then I was so sweating this illustration even before I did it. I was so worried because the birthstone for this month, which every month I always organize these illustrations in the same way, with the character in the foreground, the birthstone in the background, and the birthstone for the month of April is diamond, which is clear. So I was like, how am I gonna paint this? But I actually I'm pretty okay with how that diamond ended up turning out. I mean, I was like, I don't think I've ever been so nervous while I was painting something before. But at some point while I was doing it, I was just like, ooh, and I was like, hey, that looks okay. That looks fine. And then I was just like, okay, I'm not gonna touch it anymore. Not gonna touch it. It's good as it is. So yeah. Then of course also for these illustrations I include the flowers of the month. So the flowers for the month of April are daisies and sweet peas. And the colors for the month, which I also try to include in the illustration, was yellow, red, and colorless. So the colorless part obviously comes from the diamond. And then so I chose the classic daisy, which has the white petals with the yellow insides, and then sweet peas come in like all different kinds of colors, so I chose red. So everything was going good, right? And then I just had like a brain poot when I was coloring her outfit, because I had planned from the beginning that her outfit was going to be yellow, because I wanted yellow to be the kind of the main color-ish that for this month. Because remember that this series of illustrations is a set. It's not just really a matter of each illustration on their own, but also it's a set. And I already know that for July, the main color I wanted to be red. And also January already had some red, even though I chose more of a black as the main color for January. But for April, I wanted it to be yellow because it had yellow as one of the main colors. I just felt that it worked the best for the springtime thing, and something happened and I colored her red, and I don't know why. And I realized, like, after I did the whole first coat of red on her outfit, I was like, wait a minute, this was supposed to be yellow. So but then I couldn't do anything about it, so I just had to go roll with it and just do it make it look the best as I could make it red. So it ended up being, I feel, too heavy in the red, because now there's all these sweet peas that are red, and then her outfit is red, and just there's too much red. I don't know what to think about it. And I mean, that's the problem with traditional artwork, right? You can't go back. No undo button. So with the power of editing, the how it was kind of more supposed to look was, rather than this, it was supposed to look more like this. Yeah, big difference. And you may be like, oh yeah, you can just edit it like that digitally, and ooh, now you got it yellow, woohoo, yeah, no problems. And I'm like, but it's on my wall, okay? The original piece is on my wall, rubbing it in my face every day. I can't undo the fact that I did it originally red. So I mean, if I ever need to do something with this project in a professional manner, and I really want it to be yellow, then yeah, I can use the digitally edited version one that has the yellow outfit. But I will forever know that I accidentally brain pooted and messed up. But either way, I mean, we gotta get back into the positivity here. I do actually quite like the outfit that I designed for her, this sort of romper one-piece thing. I think it looks nice. I'd wear it. Maybe I'll have to sew it for myself one day. I'll cosplay as my own character. Yeah, no, that's not cool. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, the zodiac signs for April was Aries and Taurus. Or is it Taurus? I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry. Oh yes, and how could I end the video without mentioning the names? You guys know I love having fun with the names. So this month of April, I just named the character April because April is an actual name, so I just, easy there. But then when it came to the other characters, you may have noticed, some of you, that Lurpa, which is April's pet parrot's name, is April backwards. Woohoo! And then when I had Plura, I was like, oh dear, I need another name. So I just scrambled up the letters of April and I got Plura. So, woohoo. It was actually a bit of a tongue twister at some points in the story, having to say Plura and Lurpa. Yeah. So yeah, it was a bit of a mess of a month, but I got through it. Onwards and forwards to the next month. And, but to be honest, I'm actually pretty worried about next month as well. Oh boy, to be continued. But yeah, that's just my introspect into how I felt about creating and my thought process behind creating this month's story and illustration. But I'd love to hear what you guys thought about it. What do you think about the story? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know. How did you like the illustration? Do you like it red or do you like it yellow? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah. Thanks so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video in any way, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comment section. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. I make new videos every week, usually uploading on Sundays. If you want to follow me on social media, all links to that are in the description box where you can follow me for daily updates. And until next time, stay awesome, stay inspired, always. See ya!